and welcome to a special session of Invest Digital Health. My name is Arundhati Parmar, and I'm the editor-in-chief of MedCity News. So back in 2001, in the tech industry, there used to be a debate on whether we should move to the cloud. The big fear was security. Is data secure in the cloud? I think 20 years later, that debate has pretty much ended, given that so many of our experiences, both in our personal and professional lives, now depend on cloud. In the healthcare cloud, even though we're a little bit of a laggard in the healthcare industry, cloud services are ramping up, especially because of the pandemic. And so I thought it was a no-brainer to invite two of the largest tech players with big operations in the healthcare cloud to have a conversation. So I'm delighted to have Greg from Microsoft and Aashima from Google to chat with me today. I wanted to go ahead and introduce them. So Greg Moore is Corporate Vice President of Microsoft Health, and Aashima Gupta is Global Director of Healthcare Solutions, Google Cloud. Aashima spearheads healthcare strategy and solutions for Google Cloud focused on health systems. In this role, she sets the direction for the transformative healthcare solutions and leads engagement with healthcare key executives in helping transform their business strategies that define new models for care, revenue generation, and improved care experiences. She founded and led the healthcare vertical and interoperability efforts at Apogee and is a passionate advocate for open data and the use of APIs to overcome healthcare data silos. Previously, she led digital health incubations at Kaiser Permanente and brought several frame-shifting opportunities to life. Aashima was recognized as most influential women in healthcare IT by HIMSS and won the top 100 Women in Femtech and Health Tech Award. Aashima received her BS in Computer Science and a Master's in Computer Applications from Delhi University, India. Welcome, Aashima. Greg leads Microsoft's health efforts globally and is responsible for product strategy, product development, and research, including AI and machine learning technology for healthcare and life sciences. He is also Microsoft's senior executive leading dedicated research and development collaborations with Microsoft's strategic alliance partners in this domain, with the goal of enabling a more open, interoperable, and AI-infused foundation for healthcare delivery that aspires to enable access to healthcare for all globally. Greg is an engineer, practicing neuroradiologist, clinical informaticist, neuroscientist, and innovator experienced in assembling and inspiring highly talented teams to positively transform healthcare for the benefit of humankind. He holds degrees from North Park College, Chicago, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and Wayne State University School of Medicine. He completed residency in diagnostic radiology and a fellowship in neuroradiology, both at Penn State University Hershey Medical Center. Welcome to you, Greg.
Thank you.
So before I launch into the real hard questions, I thought I would let you guys do a little bit of advertisements for yourself. So Aashima, why don't you take it away and share some information on how you guys at Google Cloud tackled COVID?
Thank you for having me here. It's a privilege. We're all in the midst of an extraordinary moment, not only for our teams, our colleagues, our customers, but for the world at large. Today, I want to share many of the ways we at Google are working to support businesses, governments, researchers, and more importantly, one another. Google was founded on the idea that bringing more information to more people improve lives on a vast scale. And that in this historic moment, access to the right information at the right time will help save lives. And this is why we have broadly categorized our efforts in three areas. First is inform, which is to provide trusted information. The second is to support, helping people adapt to changing world. And finally, recovery, contribution to the recovery assets. At the end, people around the world are looking to helpful advice and accurate information. So let me quickly give in each one our work there. So core to Google's mission is to provide helpful information. And during COVID, this mission transcended to keeping people safe, informed, and connected during this period of uncertainty. And we did that with partnership with public health authorities like CDC and WHO. And just to give you the idea of the scale, in the beginning of the pandemic, we had 400 billion impressions of information about COVID-19 on our search site. We also took down 850,000 videos that we felt were harmful. So as we move out of the pandemic, we will continue to put the best and most accurate information forward for the consumers. And this will include amplifying authoritative voices through YouTube, through search, surfacing information in Google Maps, and we provide this information across the globe, but for multiple different languages in multiple different countries, and that mission to surface this authoritative information will continue. The second pillar in how we help was around providing support. COVID changed us all in how people live their lives, from small business to from parents to school students to teachers. And one good example of our work is around Google for Classroom. And in this was provided to the educators and schools around the globe. And just in the US, the site has seen 1.75 million visitors. And for reference, in the US alone, there are 3.7 million teachers. So the impact and the scale in providing this technology enabled children around the world to still be able to learn remotely. Another aspect was supporting remote workers, collaborations with employees, and especially in the healthcare setting. How do you provide the telehealth? How do you still support the remote work in the new world, in supporting that? And before I go to the third year for the recovery, I want to say that COVID-19 has been really, really transformational for healthcare industry. Yes, every other industry was impacted, but healthcare industry has seen the profound impact. And let me share how it has been humbling challenge for the industry, but also I continue to be inspired by the ways our customers and partners innovated in spite of these challenges. So our focus in Google Cloud is fourfold, especially in healthcare. And let me share one by one. First is around data insights and interoperability. And in this case, we also know that amount of healthcare data is exploding. It's coming in different formats, FHIR, HS7, and COVID data is coming from labs. We're talking about wearable like oximeter data, and this device data combined with your EHR data, combined with labs, we call it the longitudinal patient record. So we launched Healthcare Data Engine that takes variety of inputs and creates a longitudinal patient record, and by harmonizing and normalizing that. A good example of customers using that are Mayo Clinic and HCA. They are building upon the Healthcare Data Engine and using APIs and applying AI for clinical settings, helping with physicians, caregivers. The second pillar is around, we've seen tremendous progress in digital front door solutions. We saw telehealth grow 1,000-fold, but now as the organizations are recovering, they're looking into hybrid healthcare models that incorporate not just the virtual, but also virtual and physical care. And the building the successful hybrid care models will require providers, payers, and ecosystem collaboration centered around data. Last year, we partnered with Amwell to help telehealth organizations implement and scale virtual health. One good example across the globe is this company, Unplugged. They are our customers in Latin America. They built a virtual health platform on Google Cloud that delivers more than 300,000 medical appointments a month and 3 million virtual consultations since pandemic. And then another example is Portal Telemedicina. They're a Brazil-based telemedicine portal. They're using AI-assisted diagnostic service. And they're housed on Google Cloud, and they support over 33 million patients across 280 cities in Brazil and Angola, particularly residing in underserved areas throughout the Amazon rainforest. So when we talk about healthcare accessibility and access, this digital front door solutions, we're very proud to work with our customers in that area. The third pillar where we're helping is around transformation of operations. Pandemic, like in the care delivery, it also shone a bright light on the cracks and weaknesses in the healthcare supply chains. At the end, there's a need for data visibility into the systems and the ways of managing spikes in supply and demand. One good example here to mention is Moderna. They streamline their shipping and logistic using Looker. It's a real-time access to dashboard. It helped them optimize their shipments, and their goal was to have 60,000 plus shipments per year. They leveraged Google Cloud and Looker to do that. In addition, we work with a number of state and local governments to deliver public health services with our vaccine impact platform, helping with both the vaccine management and distribution to providing critical information to the communities. A good example of that is state of Arizona. We helped them develop end-to-end vaccine management distribution system, where Arizona citizens were able to book more than 150,000 appointments leveraging that platform. The fourth pillar, it would be remiss. This is a moment for science and research. We see that machine learning could play an important role in accelerating the discovery of new medicines, as we saw with the vaccine development. And technology has created now an opportunity to leverage big data in ways that was previously impossible. So our partnership with Harvard Global Health Institute, where we work with COVID-19 public forecast in providing the public data sets, working with Johns Hopkins on the data sets as well. Also, another thing to mention here is our colleagues at DeepMind. They announced this incredible feat in life sciences where with the AlphaFold technology, it's a 50-year-old grand challenge to understand the protein structure production. It's a stunning breakthrough, and now they're continuing that work and making the database available that will cover all 20,000 different proteins that are expressed by the human genome. And this data will be freely and openly available to scientific community for research. At the end, we'll continue to work tirelessly on all these four different pillars to support our customers. But at the end, it's the technology is an enabler for healthcare transformation. And I want to thank to all the frontline workers and everyone to make this moment possible and helping us all get through this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Aashima, for that. Greg, let's go to you.
Thank you, Arundhati, for the prior introduction, and great to see you again, Aashima. It's a pleasure to be with you all here today, and thanks to the MedCity Invest audience for joining us. As a physician and as a leader at Microsoft leading health and life sciences, I can just share that we really needed a remarkable and very complicated moment for the healthcare industry and for human health in general. It's, as most of you all know, it's been a moment of great challenges, and it's also been a moment of great acceleration, innovation, and a coming together of organizations in a united front to face the crises that we're still in the midst of today. And while there can be no doubt that virtually every industry, every business, every organization, and indeed all of us as individuals on this planet have experienced some measure of disruption and indeed many deep losses over the last 18 months, I believe it's safe to say that no industry has been transformed as dramatically as that in healthcare. Born of necessity and the remarkable digital transformation that we've seen in healthcare over the last 18 months and running has really laid the foundation, I think, for achieving something that we have dreamed of for years: better outcomes, lower costs, better experiences for both patients and providers, something we call the quadruple aim. I think that we've laid a really critical foundation, again, out of necessity. What I've seen during this time is really three different key trends that are accelerated by the pandemic. Number one, we've seen a great urgency in migrating to the cloud, something that was mentioned at the top. And that includes both edge and cloud hybrid solutions. Really needed to support data and compute workloads, specific to healthcare and life sciences. So from collaboration to interoperability, something we care about a lot as an industry overall, to bringing insights at scale, cloud makes that so much possible. Things that weren't possible before makes them possible today. Number two, there's now clear alignment and indeed scientific clarity that AI precision health is indeed the future. That's enabled through a 360-degree patient picture over time to enable and even empower personalized health, getting the right medicine to the right patient at the right time. AI is technology's most important priority, and say here that healthcare is its most urgent application. The possibilities really do seem endless, whether that's NLP or natural language processing, clinical trials matching, ambient clinical intelligence. These all really represent a bold future at the intersection of AI and patient-centered care for us all. Now, the third trend that we've seen has been this rapid rise, something that Aashima talked about as well, this rapid rise in virtual care and operations, including the integration of both virtual and physical care across continuums. One quick story, before the pandemic, I was actually skeptical of the idea that people would interact with bots as part of their medical care. Skeptical enough that I was really hard on my own team at Microsoft that was focused on applying this technology into healthcare. Boy, was I really glad to see the outcome of this. And so if you fast forward, this bots are now a thing in healthcare, and actually they're front and center. Since the onset of the pandemic, Azure Health Bot, for example, has delivered more than 2 billion messages to over 150 million people in 25 countries and counting. And it's one of the really remarkable things about this effort that most of our customers deployed bots in just weeks. And this is where technology can scale and really bring meaningful change and transformation in healthcare as we go forward. First with COVID-19 response templates, but now vaccines, back to work, but many other scenarios that will play out for years to come. HealthBot, as I said, was adopted by several thousand providers, first of all in the US Centers for Disease Control, and then many NGOs and international health authorities across the planet. During the pandemic, we indeed saw decades worth of research in a single year, something in my own scientific and medical careers has been astounding. Scientific research was evolving as the pandemic unfolded in ways that wasn't always easy. And it was there we really saw the best of us come together across universities and indeed even across companies that are competitors like Microsoft and Google, really came together in coalitions. We helped bring together a coalition of leaders, for example, and organizations and community health experts to work for the greater good. One of these coalitions that we really leaned in on was The Fight Is In Us. Was committed to the development of equitable access to preventable and preventive interventions to deliver effective therapies and treatments for COVID-19. Not just because it was the right thing to do, but also because it was an effective way to protect those whose lives were most at risk, and ensuring the best available treatments at the time, whether that's near term or long term, are made available in an equitable way, something that Aashima talked about as well. And not only have we seen the power of partnerships during this crisis, but also the digital transformation of healthcare that I alluded to earlier, really in response to this pandemic. The rapid advances in AI over the past few years and the potential of precision medicine has given us the tools, the technologies, and now the experience that we need to reimagine care and indeed help rebuild this strained ecosystem of healthcare as we look to this post-pandemic world. I'm really excited about the opportunities, for instance, with ambient clinical intelligence, monitoring, for instance, potential falls in the ICU, using ambient technology to train surgeons in the OR, remote monitoring at home, documenting healthcare encounters, and really empowering patients to take charge of their health and fill in the gaps with even wearable sensors that are now ubiquitous across the ecosystem. I think through ambient clinical intelligence, we're going to see more meaningful interactions between providers and patients, less burnout, and making care more affordable and accessible to all across the planet. Thanks for listening to that, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Greg, for that. Really provide us a perspective of the different capabilities you leveraged during the pandemic. I guess the first question I had is a hard one. You know, both your companies are so ubiquitous. I live on Google Chrome. I used to live on Microsoft Office. I know, my kids still live on Microsoft tools. Um, you guys have so much data about each of us, right? So much is happening on your systems. And now with interoperability, especially in the healthcare world, more and more of your data is passing through your the connections that you've built and your platforms. So how do you convince a somewhat skeptical public about data privacy when you are talking about interoperability and you're talking about all these connections that you're making, in the order of millions? I'll start with you, Greg.
Sure, thanks for the question, and it's really an important point. Our healthcare data is our most private and sensitive things about our lives and the lives of our families, and even as a caregiver. Privacy couldn't be more important, and the security of that data couldn't be more important. I'll say that this, at Microsoft, we run on trust, and part of that trust is that that the data that we process actually stays within our customers' tenants. So our customers own their data. Microsoft doesn't own their data. We help our customers do interesting things that are useful to provide the information that they need to provide better outcomes for their patients. So we provide them with tools like machine learning and AI, with analytics tools, with cloud-based technologies to process their own data in their own tenants, which completely remains within our customers and within their tenants and under their control. I'll say that that part of that trust that those healthcare providers have, they've been earning that with their patients in many communities across the country, with their patients every day for over a century. It is part of their ethic. And as Microsoft's role in empowering every organization and every person on the planet to achieve more, we are here as a technology company to empower their operations, and that includes providing them with a secure platform with all the privacy controls that they need to not only protect their data, but to actually deliver care to their patients.
So Aashima, the same question for you. And Microsoft, being a much older company, has gone through the whole antitrust cycles. Google as a company is facing that. And there was, I think it was a year ago or so, where the privacy issue became a really hot button topic at Google with the work that you're doing with Ascension. So that to the average lay American who's seeing these antitrust cases that is being brought, how can you talk to them about privacy and how you're structuring your relationships with health systems so that the data is really secure?
Arundhati, that's a great point. And as Greg mentioned, the whole premise of the cloud is that data does not belong to the cloud, be it Google Cloud or Microsoft. The data belongs to the health system that we are working with. And in that, also think of that, I give this example of going to a bank vault. So if I have a precious jewelry and if I'm going to the vault, the bank is providing the infrastructure, you have the keys. In a similar way, when patients are working with the hospital system, imagine that health system is putting the data in the Google Cloud Vault. They have the key. The data is encrypted. So in that case, both from the technology perspective, it is segregated. We have trust principles that we are very vocal about. I think that was a learning moment in creating more education, more awareness of from the both security and also importantly privacy. Mm-hmm. We have 7 privacy principles that we are very proud and focused on in giving that comfort to the community at large that this data belongs to you. It is encrypted. You have the key. But also, I believe trust is also formed in transparency and also accountability. So it's not just enough for me to say we have third-party audit reports that are certifying the access, right? We are very transparent about data access. There's actually a whole slew of work called access transparency logs. We definitely publish that. It's audited. And at the heart of it, I believe for the average layman to understand as a patient, like we're all healthcare consumers, and we will feel a lot more comfortable knowing that the health system, and they work with a technology company, they get their own dedicated locker, if you will, to keep the data. It's for their own operations. They operate it. They are the operators. They have the key. That's how I would like compare that to going to a kind of bank vault.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So I'll continue on with the idea of interoperability. I know that is something that is, you hold it close in your heart. Can you give me an example of some of the frustrations you felt as a patient or as a family member of someone else who was sick, where you felt these two worlds are so disconnected?
Yeah, Arundhati, I think back in April, I had my own mother go through COVID episode, and it was pretty devastating. She's recovering from it. She's on the mend. And when we talk about data interoperability, I think that patient lens or the consumer lens becomes very, very important. Mm-hmm. And still, what you've seen at COVID-19, your labs are performed by a completely different facility at times. Your COVID test happens differently. Your radiology images, when you're doing CT scan, it comes from a completely different facility as well. So what happened in case of my mom, where this world became so personal? Healthcare is always personal, but the care transition is make and break for COVID patients when they're discharged from hospital and when they go to home. And yes, we have telehealth, we have virtual care. I had her pulmonologist, her physical therapy, all kind of arranged at home. But when her oxygen started dropping, there's no link between the digital and the physical world if there's no data linkage and the data interoperability. So I saw that firsthand as a very worried daughter, but also as an industry. I think our future generation will look back at us. How do we make this care transition that care is tied to people, not to places? It doesn't matter whether I'm in the four walls of the hospital or I'm at home, and my data belongs to me, or in case of my mother, that seamless operation and transmission of data is still something to aspire to. I know there's a lot of work in the US, especially with the 21st Century CARES Act, but at the heat of the moment, this did become a matter of life and death from the patient's perspective. So I hope as we look forward, and this is a call to action from anyone, as we're thinking about post-COVID world and creating digital infrastructure of the future, thinking that interoperability is not just to meet a regulatory mandate, it's really for the patient, for the caregivers, and to help them empower them to take care of their own health. I'm sure.
Sorry, go ahead, Aashima.
I was going to say, Greg, I'm sure you'll have a perspective as well from this.
Yes, I think you've articulated it well. And Aashima, I'm so glad your mom's recovering, and thank you for sharing that story with us. I think it really points out that interoperability is, which we know and usually think about as part of data and systems. Really what we know is the ability to access, exchange, and interpret data between systems, that it's just not about those systems. It's actually helping people, including our family members, navigate their own healthcare journey, and ensuring that you can share that data not only between systems, but between providers and caregivers and even family members to achieve, to provide care and support and outcomes and really achieve the things we want to on a positive healthcare journey for our patients. I've been gratified to see the progress that we're making in interoperability and data liquidity, while assuring that privacy and security that we talked about a moment ago. And it's been great to see API access with FHIR APIs, our fast healthcare interoperability resources that were alluded to, really now become standardized and offered to the ecosystem to really enable this vision to be able to share data across systems and between providers and patients. That has been as we've seen during this pandemic, it's been so critical that we can be able to share this data quickly and without barriers. More to do, but I'm really gratified that we've had this opportunity in this moment to really drive this change.
So continuing along that theme, I feel like health equity could be a place where tech can have a role to play. I'm wondering, staying with you, Greg, whether Microsoft had any programs or projects to address some of the health equity issues that became so evident to us during COVID.
Yeah, health equity is so important, and as you just highlighted, it couldn't have been more highlighted by the pandemic, where we've seen differences in for example, ability to access even vaccines. And we're still seeing now differences that depend not only on your zip code, but where you live throughout the world. We've leaned in together with local, federal governments together in our vaccine programs to help them ensure equitable and fair access to vaccines in a number of areas. I will say, there's so much to do in this area. To think about equity in a global context across the planet, there's 4 billion people on this planet without even basic access to medical care, and this is an area where technology companies like Microsoft, like and others can really lean in with virtual platforms, with connectivity, to really begin to make a change and facilitate that change as more and more of the world comes online. So we're excited. We're already leaning in here significantly, and we're going to continue to lean in this area in terms of really accelerating that access to care with technology. And I'll say that even when I referenced earlier how quickly you can scale technology in just a few weeks to thousands of healthcare systems and people with the bot technology, really gives me a hope and optimism that we can make even more meaningful change as we go forward. I think we all saw virtual visits rise from just a fraction of percentage of all healthcare visits during the pandemic to over 50% of healthcare visits, something that we thought would take a decade. Right. And it literally happened overnight. So, that is gratifying to me, what can be done to actually provide access to care, one of the biggest barriers for health in this country and indeed around the world.
Same question to you, Aashima, about this access to care and how technology can help address some of the social determinants of health. Just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
This is a topic very near and dear to my heart as well. Health equity is very soon becoming digital equity. We all saw during pandemic. So when we are looking into health equity, it's social determinants of health, but now access to broadband, the digital equity. Can we really have health equity without the digital equity? And I think that those are the type of questions we are really challenging ourselves with, to expanding the definition of health equity, if you will. So I'll give you an example. In Kiralty is one of the companies we work in Latin America. They built a virtual health platform during pandemic, leveraging Google Cloud, and they managed 300,000 medical appointments in a month and almost 3 million virtual consultations in Colombia for the first year of the pandemic. Like, that's where the access to digital technologies can also now hamper your access to health. Mm-hmm. So for us, health equity to me means 3 things. One is around access to health data, social determinants of health data. We all know like 80% of your health is influenced by not just your medical record, but your zip code, where you live, what you eat, and now your digital broadband access and things like that. The second is around, once you get the data, you're combining that to create meaningful applications. Can we intervene? Can we reach out to people who are kind of off the grid, or to Greg's point, to fair and equitable distribution of vaccine, knowing where the pockets are? And the third is measurement. Continuing measurement is not one and done. health equity is an ongoing endeavor. It needs to be an ongoing endeavor. It needs to be, again, the data intervention and measurement. It needs to be, and that's what we're hearing a lot from the community. And earlier, I think a few weeks ago, White House has launched a whole office around health equity, and I think that's where another thing. How do we measure it? So I've been part of FIRE community for like 7-8 years now. How do we measure health equity the same way? To speak the same lingua franca in healthcare, that becomes a challenge. What are the attributes we need to measure? Can we standardize it? And that's where tech companies like us can then influence in building the standard, but also giving you the implementation tools to connect so that you can collect, intervene, and measure these efforts going forward. That's a role I think we ought to play as a tech company, as an enablement.
You make such a good point. I remember a few years ago when we still had in-person conferences, we had a panel on health equity and social determinants of health. And there was a venture capitalist from Cleveland Clinic Ventures who basically said that it's outside their purview to talk about, transportation or not transportation. I think it was housing that he was talking about. It was in the context of Kaiser Permanente here in California providing housing. And now fast forward to 2021, Cleveland Clinic is providing broadband services for the population it serves. And so that's how far we've come, where it really truly is about digital equity. I mean, you look at education, you look at healthcare, without a fast broadband service, you're really nowhere. So Greg, let's flip the script from health equity to machine learning, and how they and the biases they may actually worsen health equity. We had a really interesting discussion in our newsroom the other day about model drift. So you come on creating a machine learning algorithm that doesn't have any preconceived biases that us human beings have. It doesn't have any technical biases that happens in the design. But over time, the models shift. So when the AI is being implemented, the population has changed. For instance, maybe a healthcare system has gone through a merger, and so the population that it used to care for has changed. So how confident are you that people involved in these decisions, in creating these algorithms, are really aware of these issues of how this is a dynamic thing? It's not you make it once and then launch it to the world, as we have seen what happened with IBM Watson in the healthcare world and Memorial Sloan. So I'm wondering what thoughts you had on that.
Yeah, it's so we're seeing some great science in AI and machine learning right now. It's gratifying to see the attention, not only paid on the science, but the the potential areas that you just brought up. You're really leaning into, is there bias in these algorithms? How brittle are they? The model drift that you talked about, and it's just gratifying to see the community come together, not only recognize these challenges, but also to say, what do we need to do to go forward as we're in these early days of AI. I think we'll look back a decade from now and see how primitive we actually were in some of these areas. And then as we go forward to implement these throughout the system, I think it highlights the importance of knowing your data and then regularly seeing how your models are performing. And that means robust cloud-based infrastructure and systems, something that we talked about earlier, and likely a retraining of models to incorporate not only new data, but to account for model drift in some circumstances. I think I was an engineer before I became a doc, and I always wanted to build things for docs, but I ended up becoming one as well. But the first thing is, how can I build something that's better than a doc to make a diagnosis? And I think that was the early days that we saw a lot of machine learning technology being developed. I think so a ton of work and really valuable work going on in that area. But what's available today to really address these issues that we're seeing, these really crises of physician burnout, is AI to help with documentation of solutions,
Right.
Of an encounter, to really lean in things that aren't in the future, but are actually used in practice every day. And we're seeing that uptake and the willingness and the trust in those systems delivering value every day to document those encounters being adopted and actually helping out those at the front lines that are so stressed at the moment. So I'm an optimist in the science. I'm really glad that we're leaning in and asking tough questions in the science and doing how do we address bias, but I'm also pleased to see how AI is actually delivering value today within this ecosystem.
So given that you are a doctor, I thought it would be important to understand, you talked about how we began with the clinical side and that didn't work so well. And now we're looking at it more from an administrative, physician burnout, back office efficiency. When do you actually see that transition or maybe that leap into AI being able to diagnose certain things better? Does it have to happen after human beings feel less afraid of being replaced?
Yeah, I think this is, healthcare is an intensely human endeavor, and that is an endeavor between a provider, a doctor, or a nurse and a patient, and I think it should remain that way. So then the question is, can we bring in tools to augment that experience? Can we bring augmented intelligence, AI, machine learning tools in to provide better quality, more efficient workflows, to provide a second set of eyes, if you will, or not just to highlight circumstances that we're seeing with a patient that we might not be paying the correct attention to. Even when you get a simple set of blood tests and vitals, that is a lot of information as a doctor to digest, and certainly algorithms to actually be able to highlight patterns that are better for a computer can better pick up than a human, and highlight those for the care providers have already been, it isn't a future thing, it's already proven valuable, for instance, in the area of sepsis detection. And certainly in my own area of radiology, there's value being produced today in imaging, again, not to remove a physician or provider from the workflow, but actually to augment their ability to provide better care for a patient.
So Aashima, a similar question for you on machine learning. How much of your day-to-day is involved on that side, aside from interoperability and health equity? How much of your time is in developing or steering through machine learning algorithms?
Arundhati, recently, most of our customers are really looking into meaningfully bringing AI and machine learning into their workflows. And one example that my colleague Dr. Salam always uses, and this is what we call model cards. So when I'm walking into the Safeway today or any grocery shop and I'm buying a yogurt, there's a nutrition label. What is in it? What are the ingredients? Can we get that around the data card and the model card? That this AI algorithm is not just a black box. Here's the ingredients. Here's the data sets that it was based on. What was the population level? I think there's very early work, and within Google, we do have AI ethics framework. Each and every AI product and project gets reviewed by that. At the heart of it is, again, what we can't measure, we can't really improve. So having those, not just a black box, but promoting that openness around the data cards, the model cards, is how we are thinking about creating and sharing that framework with our customers. It's a pretty unique idea, but very important one. And the second part of the question, as Greg mentioned, technology is here to aid the doctors. I can't stress enough the cognitive overload that our physicians and nurses already had and what they went through during COVID. Like being, again, on the receiving end from a consumer or a hyperventilating daughter, if you will. It's so hard. And then human connection and healing begins with that doctor-patient communication. But can we aid that? So think of telehealth visit where your caregivers can join. And can I do remote monitoring where the data is at the fingertip of the physician? So we believe AI machine learning can help, Because yes, having good data is good, but it's not great. What's really great is getting insights from the data which are actionable. That's where machines are at the service of a physician. Can we help them make better decisions through it? It's not a replacement, far from it. And can we make that human experience much more richer by not throwing more data at it? Because frankly, this is my Kaiser experience. Physicians don't want more data.
Right.
They do not. They want more actions, like insights, like what do I do with it? And I think that's where making sense of that data variety, data volume, crunching it together and giving that insights, that's what is more meaningful. And that's where I believe the AI machine learning can definitely help with the pattern recognition.
That was very interesting, Aashima. Greg, wanted to ask you about why you thought that no one would want to talk to a bot regarding their healthcare. I mean, that bot is not really diagnosing. It is just triaging and sending people to where they need to be. It's kind of like when I go to Amazon to return my product, I'm very happy that I'm talking to a bot because they quickly tell me what to do. So I'm wondering where your skepticism came from.
Yeah, so I certainly knew the value of bots in retail and others, and it was really probably my bias as a doc to say, is someone really going to want to share their ask their questions, their personal questions, and then really trust coming back and trust bots as they go forward. It turns out that the bot technology is not only intelligent, using some of our most sophisticated AI technology in that conversational speech, but also draws on incredible vast libraries of resources from these providers that have garnered trust every day. So it was really our technologists bringing together a great technology with great content with the providers in the ecosystem to make that all work. And what happened for the medical consumer, the patient, or their caregivers, is that they immediately saw value, particularly initially in COVID when they were on hold or couldn't get through their provider. That they found a way they get reliable information and to get it in the form that they wanted, to get more information beyond that, and then also mechanisms to get warm handoffs to providers that was much more efficient than being on hold on a phone call. It's interesting that I'm so glad that I was proved wrong, and this event really shone a light on the value you could bring to that with the providers. I'm really proud of the sort of engineering teams that brought all of those solutions together. Probably what I'm most proud of is the impact that it made for our healthcare systems. That we saw call volumes being handled by these bots, these triaging, or what's the next best care, down in the 10s to 40s, even 50% at some institutions, to really allow them time to have access to their providers, and really were able to step in and handle a lot of that volume and provide value.
Yeah, I remember early on in the pandemic, where Providence was probably one of the first health systems that really advertised the fact that they were working with you guys and the bot, and how helpful that was. I remember that.
Yeah, Providence has been great partners with us throughout, and indeed, this technology first started as a pilot with Providence moving forward, and then scaled from there.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about healthcare policy. In an ideal world, forgetting for a moment that we have a 50-50 split Senate and an equally divided House almost, what kind of policies would you like for the Biden administration to pass that would help technology companies in healthcare? And I'll start with Aashima this time. I
would say very resounding, no rollback for telehealth.
I think everyone has pretty much said that's not going to happen. If you were to believe me. Go ahead.
I think to your point, Arundhati, we all need that advocacy. We need that for our patients. We need that for our physicians. And we really need to say no rollback. There are a lot of, even now, when we are talking to the health system, the telehealth use kind of plummeted, and came the Delta variant, and again, so we're going to see these spikes. And even now there are a lot of regulations that are in that zone where they're about to expire by the end of the year. Some will not. So we will need very clear guidance and telehealth advocacy to be on the top. So that's my number one thing, if we can do that. The second is around health equity. There's projects like Gravity where can we help standardize what health equity means? Otherwise, my fear is everyone will solve it slightly differently. Like what health equity means for health system A versus health system B versus health system C or a pair. Can we help with the common lingua franca like we did with the fire interoperability standard? By the way, it started with 16 clinical components. Can we get that for health equity? And I think those are my two asks, and of course the interoperability is the pillar we all stand on.
Greg, any dream?
Sure. I agree with everything that Aashima just said, and I would say at Microsoft, our approach to healthcare innovation is one that's both ambitious and really broad in the U.S. and globally. And our team is really committed to democratizing technology through public-private partnerships. It includes open source software and data transparency, privacy and security, not only in the US, but across the EU and with GDPR and other regulatory schemes. We believe the future of healthcare should be built by many, and that healthcare should be accessed by all. And so I'd like to see policy and regulation that supports that collaboration. I think we've made a lot of progress when it comes to interoperability and data standards like FHIR. And I think of all the investments, for instance, that the ONC has made to date, and all the great accomplishments and the new capabilities that now technology companies have come in to support those standards and interoperability. I can't wait to see the next wave of how we can use data to support healthcare systems and to support the patients that they serve. So open, collaboration, transparency, secure, and privacy, those are all areas that I'm looking forward to seeing in the future.
So collaboration, I feel like just as a journalist covering healthcare, I saw less of competition in the past 18 months and more collaboration. Previously it would be rare for health systems to say that they are using this technology or that technology. So I've seen a lot of collaboration and more transparency. Is this a pipe dream for this to continue, or do you think once the urgency of the pandemic recedes, it'll be back to a limited pie and all of us vying for it?
Yeah, I can start out here. I think as you said, it's been amazing, not only the collaboration with partnerships with healthcare systems, but Microsoft, Google, others. We were on the phone during the pandemic together, arch competitors in the normal sense, seeing what we could do with a sense of urgency, to address the needs. I am actually optimistic and hopeful that in this particular area that particularly around standards and interoperability and data, everyone wins here. The patients win, first and foremost, healthcare systems win. Technology companies have the opportunity to lean in and empower and differentiate and challenge each other on solutions. So I think there's all kinds of good reasons that should continue in the future. And I think the positive outcomes and the transformation that we've seen makes me an optimist that we'll continue collaboration with some healthy competition as we go forward.
Aashima, tell me that you're a little more skeptical about this than Greg is. He seems entirely too cheerful on this.
No, because what I'm seeing, Arundhati, and this was, it was a dream, meaning in the middle of the pandemic, how different companies came together, and not just in the health system or not just the tech companies, we saw pharma coming together as well. Mm-hmm. So the biggest shift, and I hope that doesn't go away, the biggest shift is a mindset and the shared purpose, shared enemy, or however you want to call it. COVID kind of united us all, that we were all fighting for it together. Similarly, as we look forward, affordability, access, could we also rally around those topics outside of COVID to really, we can see magic happen when the industry kind of works together. And I hope we all continue to do that. And my only skepticism is where there was a shared sense, there's a shared purpose, and a virus like COVID, a tragedy, pandemic, the world stopping, and yes, we came together. What if for the affordability for access, as Greg mentioned, 4 billion people in the world do not have meaningful access to? We don't need a new pandemic to cooperate together. I think that's where my skepticism and hope is that we should make that as a priority.
So I just want you to look forward a little bit as we wrap up our discussion today. I mean, you and I, Aashima, are in the Bay Area. We are in a very highly vaccinated zone. I recently had a social outing where I was outdoors without a mask and not socially distanced and hugged people and did not feel that scared. How do we bring the rest of the country into this? There is quite a bit of pushback from certain sectors, certain governors on the mandates, even though there is evidence that without the mandates, you really can't get to, a good vaccination rate for the whole country and indeed the world. So are you optimistic about the future? What will 2022 bring?
So I'll try to bring us home on an optimistic note. I'm confident in the science. I think that we'll continue to lean in on communicating those science and those facts that vaccines are effective, that they're safe, and I think I think we're all experiencing this. We're in this together, not only as a local community, but as families, and then as a global community. And so I believe in the science, and I'm an optimist that we're going to get better at communicating that value proposition as we go forward. And it's nice to see the progress that we're making. It's not fast enough, and I'm confident that we're going to do better and accelerate that as we go forward.
Well, from your lips to God's ear, right? Aashima, what about you? Are you equally optimistic?
Absolutely. I think what you've seen in 18 months, industry transformed to 10 years. And somewhere, like, as I mentioned, back from my Kaiser days, video visits was there. Now telehealth is the modality, right? So we've seen things that were possible before, but the power of the ecosystem kind of coming together. So we will see, I'm optimist when it comes to digital health, remote monitoring. I think this is a technology which is a decade old, but whose time has come now. It's as we look forward 3 to 5 years from now and walk back, what I'm seeing is that digital infrastructure is being put in place now. People are really thinking there's no going back. There's no going back, where I highly doubt that people will always make 2-hour trip to the doctor, even for a refill. I think we all have come out of this pandemic a little different. And in that, healthcare industry also has embraced some of these new paradigms, and they will stay. So both in digital health, remote monitoring, meaningful application of AI to really push forward with the research. That's incredible. We've seen a vaccine get developed in months, right? So I believe we are changed for good, both at the human level and as a world, and that will continue. So I'm super optimistic about as we move forward from here.
Some might call all of us naive in being so optimistic when so many of us are still not vaccinated. But this was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much to both you, Aashima, and Greg, for taking the time to spend some time and chat with us on all these really important topics.